Okay, quick update on a Friday, another week with the S&P up. Not much pressure on Donald Trump from that perspective. Of course, I thought there'd be a deal like 2 weeks ago. They're still dithering. They are in negotiations, reported by Axios as well as other news wires, and confirmed by state media in Iran that proposals have been exchanged. Iran's proposal that landed with a thud last weekend was responded to on Monday by the U.S. by reports suggesting that they might be open to the idea of punting on the nuclear negotiations so long as there's some guarantee that the nuclear dust won't be touched or moved in the interim. And apparently the Iranians responded with a proposal on Thursday. President Trump suggested he's still not too keen. And again, he's under no pressure. I think what I missed the last couple of weeks is there really hasn't been huge cost yet to Iran for dicking around, trying to extract some last minute concessions and trying to see if maybe this Hormuz weapon will start to bite, start to see oil push through 120 and, affect global asset markets a little more than it has. Well, they're not getting that. I know a lot of people speculate that inventories will run out and this and that. But at this point, it looks like the Hormuz thing is problematic, more so for some countries than others, but for the U.S. on the whole, manageable. And we got a really strong GDP number this week, and this AI CapEx boom is accelerating. Jobless claims, 189,000. So yeah, $4.35 for a gallon of unleaded is a pain in the ass. Problematic from a household budget standpoint. I get that, but it's not the end of the world from a macroeconomic standpoint. And while I'm sure the president would rather have gas below $3, he's not going to taco just because of that. So I think Iran is still stuck here. They're not going to be able to do tolls in the Straits. Not happening. The Treasury said this week anybody paying tolls is in violation of sanctions. So that's not going to be accepted. The nuclear dust is under rubble. This enrichment thing is just silly. I don't really understand why they would die on either one of these hills. And I do think this is a negotiating dance where they're trying to give themselves enough time to see if maybe they'll get that oil to 150 that will really get the president of the United States to provide them some concessions. But there's a risk on the flip side, because the longer this goes on, there is some clock ticking as to when they're going to have to shut down oil production that will cause some long-term damage to the wells. It might be a few weeks. It's not going to, blow up in 3 days, as Trump suggested in his hyperbolic way. But in 3 weeks, perhaps, it starts to become a problem. And I think the bigger problem for Iran is the longer we go without this Hormuz shutdown, pushing oil to 150 and blowing up markets, the more risk they run that Trump's going to say, let's just go for pushing these guys out of power. Because once it looks like the Hormuz weapon is done all the damage it can do, then Iran really risks that the deal is going to get pulled and then they're screwed. They've dealt with sanctions for a long time, but this was an economy, society on the verge of collapse in January. The Cent suffered damage to the tune of about 60% of GDP by some estimates. Productive capacity really damaged in widespread fashion. And this blockade is like sanctions on steroids. So yeah, they can take a lot of pain, but even the pragmatists within the Iranian regime are saying, look, this is not a game we can win. So, whether it's next week or shortly thereafter, I do think the clock is still ticking to a deal here, and Iran is increasingly playing with fire by stretching things out. But from the sounds of it, this is going to probably get stretched out into next week. Still think this ends with a deal.